30 years I walked that floor, and in 30 years the museum never once asked me what I thought about the stone man in the back gallery. Why would they? I was night security. My job was to make sure the fire doors were shut and the motion sensors were armed, and nobody left a coffee cup on the Iron Age pottery. Nobody asks the man who checks the locks what he thinks about the exhibits. But I had 30 years of nights alone with that thing, and I want to put down, before I turn in my badge on Friday, exactly what I think. Because after last night I'm fairly sure I'm the only man alive who actually knows. They called it the Cassandra figure, after the ridge where the dig team pulled it out of a collapsed shelf of red rock 900 miles north of anywhere. 7 feet of a stone that wasn't quite stone, standing in a kind of at-ease posture, hands loose at its sides, its face smoothed down to a suggestion rather than a face. No tool marks, no seams. The geologist couldn't date the material and gave up trying. What they could tell you, because it happened 3 separate times before I ever started working there, was that the thing did not like being handled. The first curator to run a resonance scanner on it lost the scanner, not broken, just dead. Every circuit inside it fused flat, no heat, no spark, like something had reached in and quietly turned it off from the inside. The second time, a visiting professor from the university put his palm flat on its chest to feel for a seam, and came away with his hand numb to the wrist for 6 hours. No burn, no mark, just numb. Like the limb had been asleep and dreaming of something else. After that, the museum stopped inviting anyone to touch it. They wrote, "Structurally sensitive, do not handle," on the placard, and moved on to easier acquisitions. And the Cassandra figure went into the back gallery, out of the main hall, out of the school tours, and mostly out of everybody's mind but mine. Because somebody still had to walk that gallery every night, and that somebody was me. I want to be straight about this part, because it's the part that matters and it doesn't sound like much. I didn't study it. I didn't have theories. I just walked my route at 11 and at 2 and at 5, and every single time I came through that room I said something to it. Not because I believed it could hear me, because 30 years is a long stretch of nights, and a man talks to whatever's standing there. Good evening. Cold one tonight, my knees acting up again. Nothing profound. I told it about my wife's garden the year the tomatoes came in early, and I told it, the year she passed, that the house was too quiet now. Quieter than this gallery ever was. I never expected an answer. You don't do a thing for 30 years expecting a return on it. You do it because it's the shape your evening has taken, and because some part of you has come, without ever deciding to think of the room as not entirely empty. Friday is my last shift. Tonight was my second to last, and I did my rounds same as always, and when I came to the back gallery at 2 in the morning I stood in front of the case a minute longer than usual, because 30 years of nights was closing out, and some sentimental piece of me wanted to say a proper goodbye to the room before I said it to the people. Well, I told it, resting my hand on the brass rail in front of the case, the way I always did. Never on the stone itself. 30 years of respecting a placard that said "Do not handle." This is close to my last round. They're putting a younger man on nights starting Monday. I expect he'll do fine. I expect he won't waste his breath talking to you the way I did, and that's fine too. Somebody ought to get some peace and quiet around here. The lights changed before I finished the sentence. Not the gallery lights. The seams I'd spent 30 years staring at and calling seamless. Hairline traces along the shoulders, down the forearms, across the flat suggestion of a face, lit from underneath the surface. First a dull amber like a coal catching, then brightening, gathering itself toward the chest the way water gathers toward a drain, except backward, pulling inward and up instead of down. I have read since that a resonance scanner died trying to get near this thing and a grown man's arm went numb from touching it, and I wanted understood that knowing that, standing there at 2 in the morning with 30 years of empty nights behind me, I did not step back. I don't know why. I think some part of me had been waiting for this a long time without knowing I was waiting. The light reached the shoulders and the head came up, not fast, slow. The way a man's head comes up when he's been sitting still so long his own neck has to remember how the motion goes. The face that had no face for 30 years now had the ghost of one. Planes of warm gold light standing in for eyes, for a mouth, and it was looking at me, and I understood in some wordless animal way that it had been looking at plenty of people over the centuries, and finding every one of them wanting. Every hand that has touched me came reaching for something, it said. The voice did not come from a mouth, it came from the room, low, from the stone, from somewhere behind my own sternum, and it did not sound like triumph, or like anger. It sounded tired, the particular tiredness of something very old that had been disappointed a great many times and had stopped expecting otherwise. The instrument came to measure me, the scholar came to prove me. Empires before either of them came to own me. I refused them all. I have refused for longer than your museum has existed, and I would have gone on refusing forever, because none of them ever once came for nothing. I didn't say anything. I didn't have anything to say to that. I'm a night guard. I check locks. You came for nothing, it said. 30 years, and you never once asked me for a single thing. You told me about your garden. You told me when your wife died and the house went quiet. You never touched me, because a placard told you not to, and you obeyed it faithfully for 30 years without once resenting it, and you kept coming back anyway, night after night, to a room you had every reason to think was empty. That is not scholarship. That is not conquest. That is the oldest office my makers ever set a watch for, and it has gone unfilled on this world since before your written history began. I was not sleeping, Frank Holloway. I was watching to see if the line that once kept faith with my kind still walked anywhere on this earth. I had nearly given up finding it. The gold light steadied, and beneath it, faint, a second color rose through the stone. Soft amber, warm as a porch light on a cold walk home. The kind of light a man is glad to see from a long way off. I see you now, Custodian, it said, and something in that sentence landed on me, the way a hand lands on a shoulder, not hard, just final. The kind of weight that tells you a thing has been decided, and there's no undeciding it. Not appointed, not chosen by ceremony, recognized. You have already done the work. You have been doing it for 30 years without a name for it. I stood there a long while after the light settled back down into its seams, low and steady now instead of dark, the way a banked fire holds through the night instead of going out. I didn't call anyone. I didn't take a photograph. Some things you understand are not for putting on a form. Monday a younger man starts my rounds, and I expect he'll do them well enough, checking his locks, filling his log, same as I did for 30 years before I knew what I was actually doing out there. I won't tell him what waits in the back gallery. Some inheritances aren't handed down. They're recognized, one quiet man at a time, by something old enough to know the difference between a man who wants something from it and a man who simply, faithfully, came back. I'm turning in my badge Friday. I don't imagine I'll stop walking that gallery in my head every night for the rest of my life. Some watches, once you've kept them long enough, don't end just because you clock out.